Hello, hello. Let's talk about houses and specifically astrology houses. This is the complete guide for everything you need to know, including how to find your houses, what they are, what they symbolize. We're going to go through what houses symbolize in general and also what houses symbolize specifically. And finally, at the end, we're going to go through what planet in each house means and what a sign in each house means, so you can put it all together. And this whole video is time-stamped as well, so you can just end up going to whatever section you want to know about the most. Let's get started. So to find your houses, you're going to go to astro.cafeastrology.com. The link is also in the description box. And you're going to click on Create New Chart. Once you type in all of your information, and yes, time is important for your houses, you are going to press Submit, and your chart will be there. If you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see this table, and this describes quite perfectly which sign is at the beginning of which house. Also, what you can do for yourself is scroll all the way down until you see this little wheel circle. And in here, what you find are these lines which symbolize where the houses begin and end. And that's it. That's how you find your houses. So let's get into what houses actually are. And in order to get into this, we need to understand what a birth chart wheel is. And a birth chart is actually a snapshot taken from the earth, looking up, from the place you were born and exactly at the time of which you were born. So what we see from the east is the sunrise and the west is the sunset. So the line across that separates the first house and the seventh house is actually the horizon. Those are the signs that were at the horizon at the moment in which you were born. So what houses basically are, they are a division of space at the moment in which you were born. And it's a division of space of everything above the horizon and below the horizon. So whenever you have a certain planet in a house, that basically means that that planet was in that division of space when you were born from the vantage point of which you were born in. And this is why if you are born at the same time as somebody else, you both can have Venus in Cancer, for example, but for you, it's in your fifth house, whereas for them, it's in their second. One of the cool things is that once you start to realize what this actually means and what the houses actually are, is you can quite quickly understand where the sun, for example, is going to be in somebody's chart. Let's say that you know somebody is born at 8 p.m. in the winter. The sun is definitely set at that point. Therefore, you can expect the sun will be below the horizon somewhere in the first to seventh house. Or if somebody is born at noon, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, in the middle of summer, that's the height of the day. So you can anticipate that the sun, not only will it be above the horizon, somewhere from house 7 to 12, but you can probably also anticipate that the sun is going to be quite high, maybe in the 10th or 11th house. So this is all great, but once you have the houses, what do you do? What does this actually mean? You know that you have Gemini in your second house. You know that you have Cancer in your third house. But what does it mean? In astrology, in general, houses symbolize a specific area of our life. And a lot of the times, this is through specific action, specific activities, because after all, we are in human bodies. We're focused on doing a lot of the times. So whereas the signs like Gemini or Cancer represent our inner thought patterns, where they manifest in which area of our life is what the houses show you. Somebody might have Cancer, the sign of Cancer in their 10th house. That means that they're manifesting that energy, those ideals of Cancer, in a different way, in a different area of their life, which, by the way, 10th house is career. They're manifesting that more in their career perhaps being in a nurturing role in their career. And this can be quite different from somebody that has Cancer in the 5th house. By the way, the 5th house is about fun and pleasure, creativity. That could very much mean that for this person, they manifest these Cancer characteristics in their artwork that they create. That their artwork has this nurturing capacity or nurturing ability to it. So let's talk about each of the individual houses. And I'm actually going to timestamp this as well for each of the houses. So you can just fast forward to whichever house you're interested in. And how I'm going to structure these little segments is to talk about what is that house about, what a healthy expression of it looks like, and what a not so healthy, unbalanced expression of it looks like. The first house is our personal identity. And if this house is well developed, it means that you have a lot of clarity and decisiveness in your actions and in how you represent yourself and who you are. You feel confident in your identity. And if this house is out of balance or not so well developed, what you start to see is people that lack self-assurance and people that have trouble leading others. They maybe shy away from it, or maybe they lead others in a very pushy type of way. The second house, you can think of it as the house of comfort and safety. And some of the ways that we find comfort and safety is by having self-respect for ourselves, doing the things that we say we're going to do, but also at the same time finding comfort or safety in material things. Finding comfort and safety in our bodies, for example. So if this house is actually well balanced, you'll find that you have a lot of self-respect and a lot of assurance based on the fact that you know if you want to achieve something that you're going to go after it and do it. You trust that you have your own back. And a lot of the times a successfully navigated second house also means that you find it quite easily to manage resources, whether money, houses, whatever. And an unbalanced second house, a lot of the times that can look like relying way too much on material things to provide you comfort and self-respect. The third house is the house of communication. And this can mean both gathering information, listening, for example, but also giving out information by teaching or speaking. If this house is well balanced, you can actually perceive a lot of contradicting opinions and be able to hold both of them without any bias. And if this house is not so well balanced and you have a little bit more work to do there, what you will find is that you are a little bit scattered with your energy. You're doing everything at once and yet nothing at all. And at the same time that you get quite stuck in the opinions and very defensive with certain things that you hear or certain things that you believe. The fourth house is the house of home. And this can literally mean our physical home, but a lot of the times it also means the emotional home that we come home to at the end of the day. A successfully navigated fourth house means that you understand your needs, your fears, and motivations really well. And if this house is not well balanced, you can see two extremes. Either you don't know yourself well at all, or what you might find is that you're actually like obsessed with finding out more about you, self-help, all of that side. The fifth house, it's hard not for it to be my favorite house, especially because I have so many planets in my fifth. But the fifth house is the house of creativity. It's the house of love. It's the house of children, playfulness. It's a really fun house. If this house is well balanced, you find that you have a natural excitement for every day to come, and that you are probably also doing something creative as a way to make your inner motivations known to the rest of the world. And if this house is not so well balanced, what you might find is that you're creatively blocked. You have a resistance to being playful and more childish in your nature. And it might also mean that you end up in unhealthy, pleasureful activities way too often. The sixth house is a really interesting house. Usually it's called the house of work, but what this actually means is that you are really diligently developing a skill a sort of competence and knowledge, and you're using that as a self-sacrifice, as a devotion, as something that you can contribute and help others with. And let's be fair, a lot of the time that is just work, just putting your head down and putting in the work every day. And a lot of the times this can yield very great responsibility. If this house is well developed, you will find that you are able to really develop a skill successfully and easily that you can actually help the rest of the world with. And if this house is not so well balanced, you might find that you're continually doing a lot of tasks, being very busy, but never actually getting anywhere with them, or never actually doing something meaningful and purposeful with them. And a lot of the times this can look like ending up in work or subordinate type of relationships where you are just sort of performing menial tasks. The 7th house is the house of relationships, and it's actually quite specifically the house of one-on-one relationships. And they can be quite intimate. A lot of the times it can literally be our partners, our husbands, our wives, boyfriends, and girlfriends. But sometimes it can also represent business partners, because that's also quite an intimate relationship. And if this house is successfully navigated, you'll just find that you have a good balance with your relationships. You're open-ended, you're open-minded, you're able to communicate easily, and you're able to have a sort of realistic expectation of what relationships can mean without losing yourself in them. And an unbalanced 7th house a lot of the times can look like having a bit more of a struggle with relationship, ending up in a relationship that is not intimate enough, or a relationship that's way too dependable, or anything along that spectrum. The 8th house is a bit difficult to explain. A lot of times it's called the house of death, the house of intimacy. But when we take a look at the 8th house, what it really symbolizes is all of the things that are sort of in the subconscious. All of the things that we have these urges, these instinctive urges towards, that are in the background. So, for example, we have these urges to actually mate with others and create a new generation. We have these urges, or these knowings in the back of our mind always, that eventually we're all gonna die. It's all of those more instinctive things that we do and that we know about. Successfully navigated, the 8th house can look like knowing that death is coming and having accepted that and having incorporated that just openly into your life. And on the other side, the unhealthy expression, the unbalanced 8th house, can look like obsession with death, whether you're just completely obsessed by it or you're super fearful and don't want to talk about it. The 9th house is the house that takes us out of the routine. It's the house where we're able to integrate new information coming in. It's the house where we travel and get to find out new things, exotic things. And it's also the house where we expand ourselves through education, anything that sort of challenges our status quo. So a nice 9th house, a 9th house that is well developed, you're able to see that somebody can actually accept new ideas. They can form their own belief system quite easily. And they are just somebody that's open and comfortable with exploring things outside of their routine. They're not afraid to step out of their routine every once in a while. On the opposite end, an unbalanced 9th house is a house where we are not okay with accepting other people's ideas, maybe a little bit dogmatic, and we could also be quite rigid with our routine as well. And in the end, being a bit bored. The 10th house is originally known as the house of career. But if you think about it, it doesn't have to be just career. It can be anything to do with our public image. Back in the days, for example, when women did not have conventional working jobs, this in a woman's chart a lot of times represented who they married, because then their status, their public image, their position in society also changed with it. A well-balanced 10th house means that it comes easily to you to find a status that is true and satisfying to you in the larger community. And if this house is unbalanced, what you'll find is that you might be in a really powerful or lofty public image or public position, but that it's not actually something for you, that you feel stuck because you can't get out of it because of your money or because of the status or whatever else. The 11th house is the house of friends and groups. It doesn't literally have to mean our friends the way we see them today. It can also be being part of a group, like signing up to volunteer at an animal farm. That's very much an 11th house. It's any group that we come together with for a sort of group ideal, a group thinking, a goal that the group has together. A well-balanced 11th house, you find that you can actually become quite clear with your own goals and at the same time be able to find a community and a support group that has those same goals as you. And if the 11th house is not balanced, you see the opposite. You're not very clear about what your goals are and hence are not able to really identify with a group that has those similar goals. You might find yourself continuously in a group, whether friends or whatever, where you don't really deeply align with the same mission. And finally, the 12th house. The 12th house is about consciousness. I know. It's a bit difficult to grasp. It's basically about the idea that it's the house where we let go of the fact that we are earthly creatures and we start to identify a little bit more with the fact that we are here observing reality. And if this house is well balanced, what you end up seeing is that you are able to quite easily transcend the ups and downs of today's life. You don't let them affect you as much, and that you just have this sense that there is something greater than just going to work, going to sleep, eating, and repeating. And if this house is not successfully navigated, what you find is that there's a lot of escapism. Whatever method you use to escape, drugs, alcohol, sleep, Instagram, it's this idea that you tend to detach from life again, but not in a way that it's in the healthy mode where you're getting in touch with the larger meaning, but rather in a way that you just shut it off and basically numb yourself. So if a certain sign is in a certain house, what does that mean? The sign shows us how we approach that specific area of life. Let's go with an example. If you have the sign of Pisces in the 7th house, this means that you approach relationships, the 7th house. You approach your relationships with the ideals of Pisces, with the attitudes of Pisces. You approach your relationships with this idea that they will allow you to transcend real life. That when you get in touch with another person intimately, you get to really see each other, that is sort of your religion, that is sort of your way of knowing that there is something greater than just eating, sleeping, and repeating. Versus if you have Pisces in the 10th house, this time you have this transcendental attitude towards your work, your career, your public image. So you actually use perhaps your career as a method to really get in touch with your consciousness, as something to help you realize that there is more than this life. You might, for example, have a career, you are a psychic, or you let others get in touch with the things that we cannot hear or see. Let's talk about what it means when a certain planet is in a certain house. The planets represent what is being carried out, and the house is where. Let's go with an example. If you have the planet of Pluto in the 10th house, the planet of Pluto represents our destiny. It represents the actions that we take towards reaching the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves. And by going through them, by working with them, that we actually come at the top to our destiny. we come to work through our problems and are able to become super powerful and meaningful to the rest of the world as well. So having Pluto in the 10th means that you're carrying out this action, this activity in the house of career, in the area of your career, your public image. So you might already be working with what are sort of the deep, dark-rooted fears that you have around your career, around how the public sees you. And when you work through them, you're actually able to realize a quite powerful destiny in your community. Versus if you have Pluto in the 4th house. Again, Pluto, it's something where you go through your deep, dark fears to come on the other side and find a really meaningful, powerful destiny. So having this activity in the 4th house means that you do this deep work around your home, around your family, around your security. So you instead will be really looking into what are your deep, darkest fears when it comes to security, when it comes to your family, how they accept you, how they love you. And when you come through that and you do the work, it's actually in your family with your security that you reap the highest results, that you really find your destiny there in that area. So let's put them both together. Let's say you have a planet in a certain house, in a certain sign. And let's use 2 examples here. Let's talk about the planet Venus. Let's talk about Venus in the 6th house in Virgo and Venus in the 11th house in Capricorn. So our where in the 6th house is our work, our day-to-day routine. Our approach, how we do it, is the sign of Virgo. We do it with a discipline. We do it with a sort of perfection, with repeated work. And our what is Venus, our values, our pleasures, and our relationships. So what this would mean is that your values and how you form beauty in your life is actually through your work. It's through your commitment to develop a habit that is useful for others. And on the other hand, we had Venus in the 11th in Capricorn, 11th house. We're talking about the area of groups and friends. We have the sign of Capricorn there. So the ideals that we're bringing into that house, our way of thinking, our way of behaving with our groups and friends, is a place where we strive to make our outer reality fit our inner world. It's about having the outer world match our inner worth. And Venus, we already talked about values, relationships, beauty. So having Venus in the 11th house in Capricorn means that we actually form our values and our relationships by sharing with the outer world, by creating solid structures that represent how we're really feeling, and we do that with our group of friends. So that is the full guide of astrology houses. I hope you were able to follow along with most of it. It doesn't need to be all of it, but most of it. Comment down below if you still have any questions about houses, because there's also quite a bit that we didn't touch here. There's just a level deeper. So let me know down below. I'm happy to answer the questions. And if you want to become a little bit more of an expert in specific houses, you want to balance certain houses out, I highly recommend to identify what sign is in that house and then do activities that encourage that type of way of living or working or doing things. And for that, I actually have a whole playlist where I live each day according to each of the signs, doing activities that come more naturally to those signs. So I highly recommend watching some of those so you can get some ideas about what types of activities you can do. Thank you so much for watching, for joining me today, and I hope to see you again soon.